see a jacket that is relatively easy to sew compared to others, and you not only have a lot of options in the design features, but also with the fabrics. You can even make your own fabric because it can incorporate quilting if you want to. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I'm here to share with you my Coda coat from Love Notions. Super excited to share. It's actually called Coda quilted coat. That in itself tells you what you can do with this jacket, although you don't have to. The way that you can make the jacket is up to you, and there's a lot of options. You can use normal fabric, you can use pre-quilted fabrics. I know some of you can access that type of material. I know I can't. And then if you are a quilter, if you have experience under your belt doing that, Tammy has partnered with Outerwood Studio, which is a brand that produces quilting patterns, and you can quilt a block. It's a size, has a design there. You quilt that first, you put your back pattern piece on top, you cut it out, and then you sew your garment as normal. You can also have a quilted front patch pocket. So those are the options. If you know how to quilt, this one has been rated confident beginner intermediate. I've never done it. My knowledge on quilting is zero. I'm not going to count one quilt I made years ago where I just sewed squares together and I actually never quilted it. I just sewed all the pieces together. So I'm 100% inexperienced. I really didn't want to start now. I don't know any of the terminology, but if you know, and if that's something you enjoy, you can have a lot of fun incorporating that on the back. The style is simple, it's classic. There's a back, it's cut on the fold. When you print your pattern, your back is full, extended, and that's because you have the option of putting it on the quilted fabric. So that's how you find the pattern piece. You have a front, you have a one-piece sleeve, patch pockets on the front that are super easy to sew. You can sew on a flap if you want to as well as an option. Over here you can have a rounded neckline and you can leave it just like that, or you could add a collar, or you could add a hood. Center front finishes in a corner, and then the side seams are really curved, higher on the sides than at the center, and all the edges of the jacket are finished with bias tape. You can make your own or you can buy it. You also have the option of putting buttons down the front, but I'll talk to you about that in a second. Because the Coda jacket is a brand new pattern, it's 20% off through next Monday the 13th. So it's always nice to get it for a bit less. If you want to, you can use my affiliate link. I do receive a commission back, and that supports the work that I do here on YouTube. Creating the content is my full-time activity, and affiliate commissions are one of the ways I make an income doing this. Now for fabric, I mentioned you could use pre-quilted fabric, or you can make your own. In that case, I suppose you would use quilting cotton for that. So that is an option. But if you want to use regular fabrics, I think the structured ones are going to work best. Linen, denim, cotton twill. I think maybe even some velvet would work, the non-stretch type, but you'd have to be careful about the nap and placing all the pieces in the same direction. And then thinking out of the box, I think a wool suiting would be nice as well. When I saw this pattern, I thought, oh no, I can't wear that. I can't sew this pattern, because initially I thought you had to use quilted fabric. That's what I thought, but no, you can use regular fabric. So I went on my hunt to find something that's going to work for hotter climate, that's going to be just a little bit of cover but still have the nice look. And I found a really nice one. Now it's like a cotton waffle material. You know when you go to a hotel and you wear the bathrobe, that white bathrobe, that type of material with texture? I found something like that, but it's nicer. It's got a print. On one side it's white, but the wrong white side is really pretty. It's non-stretch, it's a little bit fluffy, and it's got a little texture that from far away makes it look like it's a quilted fabric, but it's not, it's just a single layer. So that's how the fabric is gonna help me in my context. Now you can make the Coda jacket lined or unlined. For lining, just choose something lighter, cotton lawn or rayon, maybe even some silk if you're experienced. And the technique to line is really simple. You don't need to bag out anything, there aren't any facings. All you do is sew a main jacket, a lining jacket, put the lining inside, wrong sides together, based around the edges, and then you just treat your jacket as one piece before you do the binding all the way around. So it's really easy if you do want to consider lining. Now this is where I wanted to talk about the buttons. If you're doing a single layer jacket like I am and you want buttons, you're gonna run into a problem maybe if it bothers you. You know, you can't just sew a buttonhole onto the fabric just as it is. It's just not gonna have the right structure. You do need interfacing on the fabric to stabilize it. So if you just put a bunch of interfacing on the wrong side of your garment where the buttons are gonna be, but you don't have a lining to cover it, it could look a little ugly. Like if you wear your jacket and it opens up and you see the interfacing there, it could look not too pleasing. So I do think about that, so I decided not to use buttons with mine. But if I was making a lined version, then I would just interface my area where the buttons are, and then it would be all covered with the lining, and then I would have no issues because you'll never see that interfacing. The other notions you need are a lot of bias tape. If you want to buy it, look for 1/2 inch double fold, which means that when you extend it, it'll be 1 inch finished with the 2 folds inside. That's the way I make mine. I make my own. I can't find any nice thing in the shops that I would want to use. I suggest you use cotton. Usually the store-bought one is made out of cotton. And I like making mine out of linen rayon blend, linen 55%, 45% rayon. It's affordable enough for me to be okay with wasting yardage on making the tape, and it's so easy to work with, easy to press, you're not gonna have any issues. I would avoid making bias tape out of slippery materials because it's just gonna make it harder than it should, and you don't need that extra stress in your life. The sizing is from extra small to 5X, a hip up to 59.5, and there is a standard and a full bust option. You would use the full bust option if you have a sewing D cup size or more, so if the difference between your high bust and your full bust is 4 inches or more. The jacket is not oversized. You do have some ease in here, but it's not extremely oversized. The shoulder sleeve connection is at your shoulder joint, which I think is really nice. At the bust, you have about 7 to 9 inches of ease. There is a range there because if you sew the full bust option, you have a little bit more ease. At the waist, you have plenty of ease, and at the hips, there's not that much ease. If you sew the regular bust, it's 2.5 inches. The full bust has 4.5 inches. The finished garment measurements gives you the total length of the jacket from the back of your neck down to the hem. It's about 22.5 inches. And I know for my height and my preferences that is too short. I'm 5'8", so I always know I have to add length in places. So I added 2.5 inches of length to my jacket. At this length, I think it fits as intended because it's at my mid-hip. If I hadn't have added it, it would be like a bolero, basically. So I added that length in 2 different places. You can see on the little graphic here. For the sleeve, I measured it, and I thought the original length was gonna be okay for my arms. So if it's okay for me, and you're sure that it might be a little long for you, so just keep that in mind because I didn't need to change the length of my sleeves. And so I'm always torn between the regular bust and the full bust option because I have a sewing C cup. When I've tried the full bust option on Love Notion's patterns, I think it's just too much fabric here. It's just not what I need. And for this one, I thought, maybe I want something in between. So I made my muslin with my length adjustments and my size extra large with a regular bust as is. And I tried it on, and I thought, I can improve this a little bit. So I did a full bust adjustment. It's not a big bust adjustment. I think it's a smaller adjustment than the full bust piece would have, but it's just what I needed. And I just added 1/2 inch. That means I'm increasing the front by 1 cup size. I generated a medium dot. It's not big or small. And that's gonna give me shaping on the side, which I think I really needed. I really wanted it to be there. I like how it looks. I did sew a different front and sewed it onto the same muslin, so you can see side by side the discrete difference between them. It's not a huge difference, but for me, it's worth doing the full bust adjustment. I don't think they're hard to do. I have a video showing you how to do them. You can do them on blouses, coats, jackets, whatever you want. This is my test garment. I made a size extra large with a regular bust. This is the original length of the sleeve, and I think it's fine. I have already added 2.5 inches here in 2 places, sort of around there and there, to not distort it that much. This is the original piece right here. I had initially made both of the fronts the same, of course. Then I did a full bust adjustment to the front, and this is the side that has the full bust adjustment with a bust dart. I have a light layer, which is how I would wear the jacket. I am able to overlap here if I wanted buttons, and even at the bottom, so the ease at the hips is fine. What you can see, and it could be subtle, you can see that the center front seam doesn't hang straight on the side that doesn't have the full bust adjustment. It sort of goes off that way, and that's just because it's begging for a little dart right there. So on the side, you see there's no dart. So when I added the dart, which is right there, you can barely see it. You can see that immediately helps this hang straight and smooth on the side. It's not a huge dart that you can see in there, but it does make a difference here. So this is how I'm able to get a fit that is between the regular bust and the full bust option. It's just customized to myself. Basically did a full bust adjustment that added 1/2 inch here that generated the dart, and then lengthened the center front, but it was very slight. The adjustment was very slight on the pattern piece. I think doing that for me at least is worth it. I think the seam of the shoulder here is fine. Everything else is good. Once I was happy with my modified full bust adjustment piece with my little dart there, I was happy to cut out my fabric and start sewing. So for the sewing, you'll see a lot. General construction. I've chosen the collar version. I'm doing mine unlined. I'm gonna show you a lot about the binding, so let's go. Coda doesn't have many pattern pieces. It's quite simple actually. The back is cut on the fold. The front you have 2 pieces. This is a patch pocket that goes on the front and it involves the side seam. There you can see that it goes right up to the side seam and it involves the hem as well. So it's really easy to put together. And over here we can see a 1-piece sleeve, and this is a collar piece. It is optional. Here we can see the sleeve. It's a simple 1-piece sleeve. The neckline here is simple. It's finished all with bias binding, and there's the option to add a collar if you want to after the binding is done, or instead of a collar you can add a hood. I cut really long bias strips that measure 2 inches, really long ones, as much as I could from the piece of fabric I had. I used the bias tape maker that has 2.5 on the back, and I've got a lot of that to bind all the edges. This is one of the patch pockets that will go on the side seam. You can see this is a side seam there. It has the same shape and the same curved edge as the side and coming up to the hem. Then you would need to serge this straight edge and this straight edge. And then what you do is you fold them in by 1/2 inch and you would top stitch this one. And then when we sew this onto the jacket, we would sew this. This is the only edge that would actually be sewn onto the front, because this is going to be caught in the side seam. This is going to be caught in the hem. What I'm going to do instead with my navy linen binding, so it looks nice. So that's going to be finished by binding. What I'm going to do to make it neater is I'm going to fold this in by 1/2 inch. I'm not going to top stitch, but I'm going to leave it folded, and I'm going to bind this with this folded already. I'm going to finish this corner nicely with the binding so it's less bulky. This is my bias tape, and I'm going to fold it right sides together here, aligning the folded edges there really neatly on the top, and I'm going to do a little stitch right there to close it up. I'm going to leave a tiny seam allowance there. This is the edge that I've serged and that we need to fold in by 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to fold it, but no stitching yet because that needs to be sewn onto the jacket. Now this is the little seam I've just sewn. Now I'm going to flip it and I'm going to get a little neat corner. Now I'm just going to tuck this inside, and now you can see that this edge is going to be finished really neatly with the binding right there. And then I'm just going to wrap my binding around and tuck the raw edge inside. This is the easiest way to do it, and I think it's neat. And this is how the edge of my pocket on the top is going to look. I'm going to give it a quick hand baste and then edge stitch this down. This is the folded edge that's going to be sewn onto the jacket, and I've got it hand basted to keep it there. That's how that looks on the top. I think it looks super neat, and I'll just repeat on the other side. Here's the front piece. This is the center front, the hem, curved hem, side seam, and the pocket's going to follow the exact same shape. So I'm just going to put it on top. Both are right sides up here. There is the optional pocket flap that you can sew over here, but I'm not doing it with this one. Do some quick basting stitches around here just to keep this together and so that this acts as one piece. And now I'm just going to hand baste this down there and then top stitch this straight edge down. I'm going to use my blind hem presser foot with the needle to the left just to help this be super neat. I'm just going to do a single row. These are decorative for me. I'm not going to be using these pockets. I think if you do want to put things in there, I would do a double row of top stitching just to make the seam a little stronger. I really wanted a bust dart on my jacket, so I did a full bust adjustment to generate a dart. It's not part of the original pattern. I'm just going to sew these up here on the dart point. I don't back tack, I just leave some thread and do a little knot by hand. I think once it's pressed, it will really get lost within the print and no one's going to know it's there, but it will improve the way this fits on me. What I've done before everything is serge all the edges of the fabric separately so I can press the seams open. So the pockets are on, I've got the back extended and the 2 front pieces right sides together. Now if you want to, you can sew the shoulder seams and then extend everything and sew the sleeve in on the flat, but I want to sew it on the round just to keep my sewing consistent. That is how I usually sew my woven projects. You can see my edges are all serged everywhere, same as here on the side seams. These are super simple seams, 1/2 inch seam allowance, pretty straight stitch, nothing really interesting to see here. I'm going to sew the side seams first, and then I'm going to have a completed armhole to set in my sleeve. There is a detail at the bottom of the sleeve. You have to bind the edge, and I think that is easier to manage when you have the sleeve on its own. Eventually I'll have to join some bias tape because I don't have a piece that's long enough to go all the way around. That's pretty much impossible. So I have them here on the straight of grain, cut diagonally. I'm going to take a thread a little this way and just pull it out, and it's going to come out. You can see where that fiber is missing there, and it's really straight. You can see through the light. And so if you cut it, you're right on the grain right here. And this is how I want to join because this is stable. Here I have the other side. It's the same. I've cut it the same way. And you have to look at them like this. They have to have the same slant. This isn't going to work. You can't join them like this. So they have to be like this. Now all I have to do is open up these folds and put these right sides together like this. You're going to have left over here and you're going to have left over there. And then when you sew right here at the seam allowance, these are going to match. So you need to have that little bit hanging there and that little bit hanging there. We're going to sew those together. So that's the seam. I started right there and I finished right there. And now when you open the seam up, these edges are going to be at the same level, but you're going to have this little bit left over. You just need to trim it away, and same as over here. Linen is easy to handle. I can just finger press this, hold it firm, and it'll be super flat. And then I can refold this and here. That's how I've joined two pieces, and it's going to be diagonal. When you actually sew this, it won't really be that noticeable at all. I'll show you how I'm going to deal with the binding on the bottom of the sleeve. I'm going to do this in the reverse. So what I've got here is the wrong side of my sleeve, and I've got my bias tape there pinned all along the edge on the round. I have already joined my bias tape here on the diagonal there. So this is the straight of grain of the bias tape. That's where it's strongest. And I've just got it pinned all the way around. Now I want to sew here where that crease is. I can see the crease really well, and my sleeve fits just right into this section. So that just makes it easier. So there it is. Now I'm going to turn my sleeve right sides out. And by sewing it on the reverse, this allows me now to bring the binding that was sewn on the wrong side and just flip it and bring this fold over to cover that seam. And this is the way I'm going to top stitch. And I don't have to worry about not catching the binding on the other side because it's already been sewn down. Okay, so that's hand basted down. It's already been sewn on the inside. And now I can just slide this back in. It's a snug fit, but it fits. Edge stitch now. That's how the bottom of the sleeve is going to look. Super nice on the inside and the outside. Now, if you don't have access to this, or you're sewing a smaller size where the circumference doesn't fit, just sliding it in like this, I'm going to show you a different way and it's going to turn out the same. Okay, here's the other sleeve. I've pinned the binding in the same way, right side of the binding to the wrong side of the sleeve. But if you don't have access to put your sleeve in like this, there's another way. All you need to do is turn your sleeve right sides out. And with the sleeve like this, your binding's going to end up on the inside. All you need to do is slide this in and sew in the same way, and it's just easier like this. So in this case, we already have the sleeve right sides out, and all we need to do is pull out the binding, take that folded edge and cover the seam. It'll be the same thing. So I'm just going to hand baste this. And there it is. Now imagining this is tiny and it won't fit like the other one did. We need to turn the sleeve wrong sides out again because I want to sew on the right side right here. Now it's going to be the same. I'm going to slide this in like that. I'm sewing on the right side of my sleeve. Either way will get you a nice result, and you'll have bound the bottom of the sleeve, which is a small circumference. Okay, so I've done my general seams. I've done the seams of the sleeves. I've done even the hem of the sleeves with the binding. So I'm just going to take those sleeves and put them aside because that's the very, very last thing I'm going to do once I'm done with the binding of the whole jacket. So now we have the whole neckline to bind, the whole thing. I'm going to start binding there at the center back, somewhere around there, discreet where my hair is. And I'm going to go around down here. At the bottom, we have a corner. I'm going to include a technique here for the binding, adding a little seam in the binding, and then we go off here. You can see the hem is curved. It goes like that. And there's also a technique that I'm going to include so that the binding includes that shape. It's like doing a V neckline, but on the side seam with the binding. And then you keep going this way. It's curved at the back. Then you get the same situation right here on this side seam. Do the technique there, keep binding, and then we're going to have another corner going up. This is the wrong side of the fabric. It's a white color. It's easy to see. And I've got the binding right side to wrong side. I started pinning around there, around the center back, and just started pinning all the way along. You're going to have quite a nice amount of curves here, but because your binding is cut on the bias, it'll be absolutely fine. And I've pinned down the center front here and down the center front there. Have a look at the tutorial that shows you how to deal with the corner. I use contrast fabric and contrast thread, and it's going to be really easy to see. You'll see that you have to stop sewing a little before the edge right here. So you don't sew all the way down, you stop about 3/8 to 1/2 inch before. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start here, sew. Once I've fiddled with that corner, then I'm gonna keep pinning and binding the bottom. I've got a pin marking there where I'm gonna start and reinforce. Remember, we're leaving a little bit loose like that. Going all the way around, we're almost at the other center front, and I also have a pin telling me where to stop and reinforce. Okay, so I finally have the binding everywhere, though I haven't done all the special techniques that are gonna make the binding lie nice like this. On the corners, I haven't done that on the center front, but I have sewn it the correct way. Same as on the side seams where we have this curved hem. I have not sewn my side seam all the way down. I have stopped about 3/8 of an inch short and reinforced. And that allows me to extend this, open it up when I'm sewing the binding. But please look at the specific video where I show you these techniques. This is what I want to achieve. It's like a tiny little V neckline, but on the side seam and done with binding. And you're gonna get binding that's super neat and that has this shape right here. So I'm showing you this with contrast binding and thread so you can really see what I'm doing, because my actual garment is using navy binding, so it's gonna be really hard to see. For now, I'm just gonna dedicate myself to do that. And then everywhere else, I'm just gonna fold over and cover the seam. I'm gonna hand baste the whole thing and then top stitch. I took my sweet time to hand baste my binding. This is the neckline on the back. Front neckline has a curve. You go down and you have the little corner right here. Then you have this little shape right there on the side seams. It'll be a really long sew, just following the curves, taking your time, and you don't need to worry about catching anything on the back because it's already been sewn from the wrong side and brought over to the front. This is the collar, this is how the pattern piece was, so it's a long piece and it's super easy to sew. All you need to do is fold it lengthwise, right sides together, and sew these short ends over here like that on both sides, and then flip it to the other side. Okay, so that's sewn. I'm gonna trim some of this away here, and now we just flip it. I'm going to give this a nice little press and then top stitch around here. This raw edge at the bottom, both layers together, we need to bind it. And then after the bottom edge is bound, then we can sew it onto the neckline. What I've done basically is just fold my binding and just wrap it around the raw edge in one go like that and baste it. I've also finished these edges right there like you saw me do with the pockets. So that's the same and it's all neat. I'm top stitching down, just sewing it on the edge from one side to the other. I'm going to remove the basting stitch at the end. It doesn't bother me right now. Just leave it there. Got a pin at the center back of the neckline there. I've divided the neckline in two. I've divided the collar in two. That'll match the center back of the neckline right there. So here's the neckline. I've got the wrong sides up here. And now all I need to do is match these up. I'm going to take this and just place it right there. Keep going off to the side. So I'm going to get it into place, just putting this right on top of the bound edge that we've already done, like this. That seam that you see there was when I sewed the binding to the collar. And then on the fold of the binding is where I've basted it right on top of the tape that was underneath, like this. So all the way from one side to the other. I made sure to match everything up, make sure everything's symmetrical, that one collar isn't off to one side more than the other, so that it's all super neat. And now I'm going to sew this second row right here, right on the edge, and that's going to catch this collar to the neckline. It's a pretty straight seam from here to the other side, and that's it. Quite a few layers here. I would suggest you lengthen your stitch length to 3.5 at least. If you want to see the exact technique for the center front corner and the technique of the binding for the side seams, please watch this video that's just been uploaded onto the channel. I made it separately because it's a technique that could work for any garment, not just the Coda coat. This is my Coda. It's such an amazing fabric. I found this in the summer in Chile, and I got other colorways as well because I loved it so much. It's soft, it's cotton, it's non-stretch, but it's a little fluffy. I just can't explain how beautiful this fabric is. So yeah, so fortunate to find it, and it was perfect. Now you can see the inside, maybe you can see the waffle texture there a little bit better. It's a really nice wrong side, so I don't mind that you can see that when the jacket falls on its own like that. So you can see that the whole jacket was bound before sewing the collar, which gives you a really nice finish here at the back like this, and also on the inside. And the binding of the collar just sort of seamlessly blends into this one over here, and I think it was so easy to sew up this collar, so easy. I didn't choose to interface my fabric because I thought it was structured enough and had enough weight on its own that I didn't want to interface it. Now if I made one out of linen, I would probably interface it. I wouldn't if I made one out of denim. I think you have to think about those things. It's fine as it is like this. My bias tape, I really enjoyed that. I really like how these corners turned out in the center front right here. I think it's really pretty. Same as the detail on the side seam with this curved hem. I think it looks super neat. It's super neat on the inside as well, which I love. Patch pockets were so easy to sew. I decided to bind the top just to add something special. I wasn't going to do the flap. If I was doing the flap, then I wouldn't have done this. I didn't do the flap because I just didn't feel like it. I will probably when I make another one. You know, I like adding my sleeves on the round for knits and wovens, for everything. It was a super easy sleeve to sew in. The bottom also has binding there, and I think it's so neat. You know, whether you want to do it on the flat or on the round, I think it's up to you. The pattern has it on the flat. When you wear your jacket, no one's gonna know. I've worn it over my legato jeans so you can see it on. This is my Coda jacket. I made it in a super interesting fabric that looks like a quilted fabric, but it's not. It's just a cotton waffle type material. I made my jacket a little longer to match my height. I've got it in a single layer, and I've got navy binding all the way around. One extra thing I added to mine was add a little dart. I did a full bust adjustment. You can barely tell though because there's a print there. I really like how those corners turned out with the binding. That was a fun technique. You can see how to do that on my channel. On the side you have a super easy to sew patch pocket, and I bound the top of the pocket just so it can contrast. I also did a special technique there on the side seam because it's a really curved hem, and I have a type of V binding there. Super fun to do, super neat inside and outside. It reaches the mid hip as intended, but I needed to add 2.5 inches to the length to achieve that for my height. You can have a simple neckline that's rounded. You can also sew a collar as an option, and that's what I did. It's finished really neatly on both sides with the bias tape, and I think it's super easy. Here is a look at the back. Simple collar, folded back, very nice. I think the shoulder and sleeve fit is really good, and here's an even closer look at the binding that finishes this collar. The collar is sewn after the neckline is finished with the binding, so that's how you get such a neat finish there. I'm very happy with mine. Now I'm excited to make a more winter one with maybe a wool suiting. This is a lighter jacket to match my weather over here that's really hot. I love how it looks. Really casual, classic, love the fit. Yeah, I'm really happy with mine. I think I definitely would want to make another one in a wool suiting material, so I can have one when it gets a little colder in May, June. I think I would line that with cotton lawn, and it would be sort of like a lighter coat for me. Maybe I'd do the hood. I'm really excited for the time when I get to sew this pattern again because I really enjoyed it. The only thing that takes a little while longer is the binding. If you want it to look really nice, you know, do the hand basting, it always works a treat. I think if you wanted to, you could simplify some aspects of the jacket if you don't want to deal with the shapes of the binding. Just round the corner in the center front, make it a little round shape. That's easy. If you prefer the bottom of the jacket to be straight, just eliminate that curve on the seam and just make it straight. That would make the binding easier as well. Or instead of having that sharp V, you could just round it out maybe, and then it would be easier to just bind like normal.
Remember, the Coda pattern is 24% off through Monday the 13th.
My affiliate link is down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm gonna get myself back inside because the sun is blasting me from here and I'm melting, sweltering out here. Have an amazing day and I'll see you soon. Bye.